Hello, all sports Tucson fans. We are here at Wings Over Broadway for the Arizona Wildcat football preview. We're doing this a little bit early, and once again, we're here at Wings Over Broadway, as you can see behind Andy. So, real quick about Wings Over Broadway, they won Best Wings in Tucson for the 7th year in a row, and I think that's a testament to JJ and his staff.
The food is Sunny Wings, which are awesome. The food here is great. The street taco pizza, if you guys haven't tried that, that's unbelievable here. They have a full menu in the bar. So and we're really thankful for JJ sponsoring us and letting us do our shows here. It means a lot to youth sports in Tucson. We generally do most of that for high schools. So we're really appreciative of having the opportunity working along with JJ on that.
So this weekend, Arizona plays Stanford. They go up to Palo Alto. Arizona comes in at 4-3, Stanford 3-4, and both teams are coming off of tough losses. Last week for Stanford, they lost a blowout, really, 30. I think it was 34-14. I can't remember the final score against UCLA, and UCLA isn't a very good football team. I think we figured that out. UCLA is not a solid football team in the Pac-12.
Yeah, especially on defense, and then you notice that Stanford running game, which was been really good in the past with Gebhardt, Love, who's the running back with the Panthers? McCaffrey. I mean, they live on the running game, and their passing game complements it. Of course, they've had Andrew Luck before, but in the last few years, in the last decade, it's been run, and pass where they can. Now they can't even run and pass. They're like 11th in the Pac-12 in offense, in passing and in running. So Arizona, whose defense is near the bottom of the Pac-12, will go up against an offense like that, which will help them. Arizona's defense is not as bad as some of the stats indicate because they stop plays when they have to. It's a bend but don't break defense, and they've been put in a bad situation the last couple of weeks. So you can't really fault the defense too much. So given the fact that Stanford's offense is struggling, I would anticipate Arizona's defense stepping up, putting a lot of pressure on Stanford, which is giving up more sacks than Arizona, if you can believe that, the way Arizona's played the last couple of weeks. So look for a good defensive game from Arizona overall.
Yeah, and another side note from that Stanford-UCLA game, they had to go with their third-string quarterback, Jake West, so they're hurting offensively. We've established that. But coming into the Arizona game, Castillo's questionable, and so is Miles. So they're both questionable. One of the two are going to start, either the starter that they had at the beginning of the year or their backup, who's put up some impressive numbers. I think it's near 600 yards passing, 5 touchdowns and 1 pick. So he's not slinging it all over the place, but he's effective. He's kind of just managing the offense.
Right. Stanford they'll probably play West. From what I've read this week, both quarterbacks are still in injury, working over themselves from injuries. So I'm guessing they're going to play West, although he looked awful against UCLA, and it's not all his fault. Again, Stanford's offensive line, again, one of their strengths, has given up a lot of sacks this year. So I would anticipate, no matter who's back there, that Arizona's defense can perform. You would think so anyway. So what Arizona has to correct mostly is their offense and their offensive line, and Khalil Tate being able to handle the pressure. That's where Arizona's biggest question mark is.
Yeah, and that reared its ugly head last week against USC. Khalil Tate got sacked 6 times, and I believe 5 times in the first quarter. He didn't have any turnovers, but 7 for 11 passing with 56 yards and negative 27 yards rushing isn't getting it done. So Arizona eventually did make a quarterback change. I think it was either at the start of the second half or the second drive in the second half. But Grant Gunnell came in. He played fairly well. I mean, by that point, the game was pretty much in hand. He went 16 of 26 with 196 yards passing and 2 TDs. So he was able to at least show some life offensively for Arizona.
The key thing is he didn't get sacked. He got sacked once, and he had the same pressure as Khalil Tate. I was listening to Lamont Lovett's post-game comments, and he basically said that the pressure's the same. Gunnell was able to handle the pressure differently than Tate. And you would think it would be the opposite because Gunnell's a freshman and Tate's a senior. It could be just the makeup of both of those players. I mean, Bunnell is a drop back passer. He knows how to operate in the pocket. Tate is more of a running quarterback. He's not accustomed to being in the pocket with the offensive line trying to block around him. It's a totally different philosophy of both quarterbacks. So I don't necessarily fault Tate too much on that because that's not what he is. He's not a drop back passer, and Noel Mazzoni is a drop back passing coordinator. So it's like there's not a good mix there between Mazzoni and Tate. We've seen that on the sideline, and then kind of Tate having negative reactions to Mazzoni. They're not similar in their approach. So it's going to be interesting. I think Arizona needs to run the ball on Saturday. It's go back to the Dick Tomey philosophy. Just run the ball and make your passing game be a complement of that. Because I think Arizona fans are sick and tired of seeing quarterbacks getting sacked. And Arizona has the number 2 rushing game in the Pac-12. So why not run the ball? Use J.J. Taylor. Use your depth of running back. Stanford's defense is average at best. They're not, again, another typical Stanford defense. Run the ball, get some good yards going, don't get sacked.
And this is a make it or break it game for Arizona because after this, I believe AZ Desert Swarm posted this. They have the 14th toughest schedule in the country headed down the stretch. You look at after the Oregon State game, you have Oregon on the road, who's probably going to be a top 10 team by then. You have Utah at home, who most likely, once again, will be a top 10 team by then because they don't have any key matchups until the Arizona game, in Tucson. And then you have ASU on the road, who's in the top 25. So you're playing back-to-back-to-back top 25 teams, and that takes a toll on the team.
Right, that's why these next 2 games are so important for them to become bowl eligible. Kevin Sumlin needs to get to a bowl game in his second year, and that can be done. They should be able to beat Stanford and Oregon State when you look at the matchups. If they lose to Stanford or Oregon State, then it's a disappointing year. They failed. It's a failure because the last 3 games are going to be very tough, and I would say unwinnable. ASU maybe because you never know about that game, but at Oregon and Utah here, those teams are superior to Arizona right now in someone's second year. So I would seriously think that they may be double-digit underdogs in both games. So these next 2 games, Arizona needs to win those to go to a bowl game. So that's why I think they have to just run the ball on Saturday. They have to get that win. Dick Tomey. One of the best games in Arizona's history is when Dick Tomey was a coach and they played UCLA. They beat them 42-7. UCLA was like in the first place of the Pac-12 or Pac-10 back then. And guess how many passes Arizona completed that game? They beat UCLA 42-7 at home. Well, two completions. They won 42-7, and I ranked the top 50 games in Arizona history. That was one of the top 50 games because what happened is Arizona abandoned the wishbone. And they went to I formation. It was out after a bye week, and Arizona's coaching staff went to Colorado. At that time, they used the I formation, and they came back, and Arizona rushed for 400-plus yards, and they won 42-7. It's one of the best victories. I mean, that's just an example that Arizona just run the ball. You have the second best rushing game in the Pac-12, one of the best in the nation. You look at the numbers, believe it or not, and Stanford's defense is susceptible against some big runs. So I would assume that Arizona would play it smart and do it that way. If they try to pass the ball along, get sacked and turnovers, then it's going to be disappointing if they lose that game.
Now, looking at this game, I think some keys for Stanford. Number 1, obviously, is stay healthy. They haven't been able to do that this year. Number 2 is feed the beast. Usually when you look at the Stanford offensive line, they are bigger, more physical, and more just dominating. Arizona's defensive line has played well over the last couple weeks, but you got to insert your dominance. You got to, you're at home. You got to take it to the opposing team. So they got to run the football, give it to Garrett, and let him eat up yardage and clock, and also create chaos. Like we said, Arizona's offensive line has struggled over the last couple games. Now, they've had some injuries with Cody Creason, the senior who started almost every game that he's been at Arizona. and also Robert Conjol, the Texas A&M transfer. Those two have been great this year, but their backups, it reared its ugly head. You know, Arizona's lack of depth is an issue. So if I was Stanford, I'd look to run the ball and make this an ugly football game.
Yeah, I think it will be that kind of game because Stanford and Arizona are both struggling right now. So it's going to be like who's going to make the least amount of mistakes. It's interesting that Stanford's in this position after being one of the elite programs in the Pac-12 and being even in nationally in the top 10, top 15. So this is a down year for them. If there's ever a year for Arizona to take advantage of it, this would be it.
So now that we've talked about the game, what are your final thoughts about the game, a player to look at, and who do you think wins?
I think a player to look at will be J.J. Taylor. See how he's looked good in the last two games. He's looked healthy anyway, so that's a good sign. Who do I look to win? I think Arizona should win. I know that goes against the train of thought after the way they played the last two weeks, but Stanford is not on the same plateau as Washington and USC. So I would assume that Arizona would take advantage of Stanford's weaknesses on offense, exploit that, have the offense be out there and gain some yards, get some long drives, and then kind of correct themselves, get some confidence back. And then you play Oregon State at home, get more confidence going into those last three games. If they get the confidence back and they work out some of the kinks, and who knows? I mean, they could pull an upset in one of those last three games. So I predict that it'll probably be about 31 to, I would say, about 17, maybe Arizona, because I don't see Stanford's offense functioning. So I see Arizona's offense functioning on the running game that'll chew up yards and get Arizona some momentum. So I think it's going to be that widespread. I think it might be Arizona could win by a touchdown or two touchdowns in this game.
You know, over the last couple weeks, I feel like, and I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, but Arizona has wasted some great defensive performances. That first half against Washington, I thought the defense played really well. And then eventually Washington wore them down with the running game because they were on the field all game long. And I thought for 3 quarters, the defense was amazing against USC. The offense gave up 10 of those points out of the 20. And for 3 quarters, you know, that defense held their own against USC, and they tried to run the ball, and eventually in the fourth quarter they were able to do that. They pulled away, and it was 41-14. So I look for a really good defensive performance by Arizona, and specifically Trayvon Mason, the defensive lineman, right up the middle, number 90. He's had a good couple games these past 2 weeks. He had a sack against USC, had 6 tackles. He's a really good run stopper. The defensive front, especially at the defensive tackle position, has been playing really well for Arizona. I think they got to spread out the ball a little bit, maybe get Stanford in some open passing lanes. I don't know who's going to be the starting quarterback by the time the game ends, but I think Arizona wins 28-14. They hold Stanford to under 20 points. Like you, I don't see Stanford being able to score, and I don't know if it's a combination of Arizona's defense playing well or Stanford's offense being that poor. But I do think Arizona struggles a little bit offensively throughout the game, but figures it out, and they win going away with it. So thank you once again for joining us here at Wings Over Broadway, and we will have hopefully a post-game show if we can set up the time for it. And for All Sports Tucson, I'm Troy Hutchison. Javier Morales, thank you.